Hello! This man up here in the screen is PaulNotSmall. Paul is someone who we've known from trolling the MyProtein forums back in 2008. He's a recreational bodybuilder, and he's made his main claim to fame through Protes, baked protein oats. He currently works as a salesman and coach, and this is him.
How do you know he's up there?
Because we're a little screen in the corner and he's the big one up there.
But
I hope it's not there because I'm going to look stupid on YouTube.
I think it's either there or there.
It's
because right now it's there.
See, I'm down here.
Oh god,
oh,
guys,
no.
you're ruining the illusion. Like,
but you know what you're talking about.
This is like my second Skype call ever. Years ago with Yusuf.
And Paul's like, Yusuf, I'm not up there, mate. I'm down here.
I'm sat here.
So Paul is not small. That's key.
Which was a nickname from before I was ever into bodybuilding or anything. That was from when I was properly not small, when I was 20 stone fat. And it started off as, I used to just say, Big Paul, he's not small. And then my mate Quinny just started abbreviating it to Paul Not Small. And then it just sort of stuck from there.
So over that time you were like, all right then, mate, I'll show you not small there. And then you were like, went balls in, just to prove a point.
Yeah,
that's the whole reason.
I've always had a big head, so I just got into the bodybuilding to try and get my shoulders
just to balance out the head.
So
Jeff Powell got it now.
Similar approach to what I do. I like to do 3 sets of 12 head compressions daily, just to make my body look bigger. So similar thing.
I had that on a Facebook photo once. Someone said that my head, like since he's known me, my head's got progressively smaller, which I thought was you kind of watch it and you think, like, is he being serious? Or is he complimenting me or insulting me? I'll just leave it. I'll just like.
People in training don't get it, do they? It's like people at work will say, "Have you lost weight recently?" And I'll be like, "You're going to have to be specific."
Exactly where do you feel that I've lost weight? So, draw a diagram.
That's going to be on my mind for the rest of the day.
So, Paul, can you tell us a bit about this 20 stone Paul and what happened in the process?
Yeah, well, basically, in my youth, I drank a little bit too much. I was living with my little brother down in Newquay. We were going out drinking every night, and I tend to do everything. I don't want to say I've got OCD because people throw around these terms, but I've got quite a habit-forming personality, and that used to be channeled quite heavily into drinking a lot, and got very, very fat, and then decided to do something about it. And there's kind of two versions of the story when people ask me what made it change. It depends who I'm speaking to, but both are true, but it depends how respectful the person. So I'll give you both versions. So the one, if I'm talking to someone a bit more, it is true. I was sat with my father watching TV and something came on television about cancer, and he said, "Oh, no male member of our family's ever died through any form of cancer. They always died prematurely from one form of heart disease or another." And at the time I was 23 stone, smoking about 30 Benson Hedges a day, and eating like mainly just Wotsits. Special room.
There's a picture of that as well, isn't there? So we'll put that in the show notes of the...
Get the fat picture up there, yeah.
It's a lot of Wotsits.
There's not one of me with the Wotsits, no. I was taken. And so I decided to do something about it, and I thought I'm not really tipping the odds in my favour. But the other thing that happened at the time, which is also true and possibly more of a motivating factor, was the fact that I was living with my little brother at the time, and he was a good-looking, confident lad, and he was tending to bring home... I've got to be careful what I say, because he's obviously married now. He was bringing home various different girls quite regularly, and I was quite realistic about it. I looked in the mirror and thought, well, I'm not really tempted to bring home a girl who's as fat as that, so why should I expect a girl to be wanting to bring this home? So I decided to get in shape, and I just started going to the gym every day on the way home from work, literally every day straight away. And everyone said, "Oh, that's not the way to do it. You know, if you go too often, you'll get sick of it too quick. But I found it easier to establish a pattern. Do you know what I mean? If I go every day, then it's then just what I do, rather than is it a gym day, is it not a gym day? And plus, I know myself, as soon as I start seeing results, I'll be then spurred on. So it kind of started from that.
That's really interesting. Just there's a bunch of stuff that you brought up there of like, as un-PC as it sounds, like there's the sense that if I was a woman, I wouldn't want to take me home. So why would I want? And now this is so you've experienced how people treat you when you were Fat Paul and when you were Paul Not Small, but also lean.
Lean Paul Not Small.
Paul
and non-lean Paul Not Small.
We'll have to abbreviate that to NSPLC.
Yeah.
It's not NSPLC. That's terrible abbreviation. Anyway, did you? So I'd like to hear a bit about how you were perceived and if you noticed any difference from previous Paul to current Paul, and also how that affected your job that you were just saying when you were doing door-to-door sales.
That all came about at a similar sort of time. So when it all kind of coincided. So when I started getting in shape at that point in time, I was a manager of a candle factory. So I was mainly when my little brother run this youth centre for these American kids that are in the Navy. And one day I stopped in there on the way home from work at this candle factory covered in wax. And this little American kid said to me, he said, "Why are you all covered in wax?" And I was like, "Oh, I work in a candle factory." And he said, "Do you eat all the candles?" And I was like, right, this is why I don't like to be around children.
That's very astute. Like, he recognised that it was wax. Like, I wouldn't be able to recognise just wax on someone's shirt. It could be any number of substances. And secondly, that's quite a witty retort to be like, did you eat them all?
It's a fair assumption to make.
What could the wax be? Other than wax?
Toothpaste. Corn flour and a bit of water.
They were scented candles as well, so I spent most of my life smelling like lavender or vanilla, rose of the valley and stuff like that. Masculine either. But yeah, that is very different. So as I then started to get in shape, and around the same time, I also started working on the door of a nightclub in Newquay. So I then lost most of the fat, and then a couple of the guys there trained at the gym, and they got me to start going to the gym to start getting in shape. And at the time when we used to go out drinking, we used to watch a lot of WWF wrestling, because you just used to think it was hysterical. And my first interest was in just not being fat anymore. And then I actually sort of started to think, once these guys got me into lifting, I started to think, I wonder if I could actually look like one of those guys. I wonder if I could look like Triple H or someone like that. You start entertaining these ideas. And then about 4 years later, I was in Subway in Newquay, and as I went down the steps inside the shop, there's these young lads in there. One of them pulled his mate out of the way, and he goes, "Get out of his way, he looks like a fucking wrestler." Somewhat, I was so excited, just a little bit scared, but yeah, that little 12-year-old made my day.
So there was a pretty defined shift from kids taking the piss out of you to kids being scared of you. From.
But no one really. I don't suppose anyone really was that unpleasant to me for being fat. It's more like there's so much more to being fat that's unpleasant, because you were a chubber as well, weren't you, Johnny?
Big one, yeah.
You're the only one that's not in the cool.
Yusuf's just had abs the whole time. He really struggles with fitness. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Lost my train of thought there.
Just thinking about me naked. It happens a lot.
Go on.
No, I can't remember what I was going to say. I can't remember what the question was.
Just the change in so like you said, it's not not just being fat. It's
more like everything's harder work. Like getting clothes is a pain in the arse. You get an idea of some clothes you want to buy, and you go to the shop and buy them, and they look horrendous on you, obviously, because you're not fat like the person was that you saw wearing them, and just the uncomfortable, sweaty nature of being fat is quite unpleasant. And it's weird how it sort of creeps up on you kind of thing. Like, I wasn't really fat as a kid. I just sort of trained myself, I think, not to really pay attention to it, and not to really look in the mirror and notice. I was kind of new, but I didn't really mentally address it until I think those two things that I said just now kind of brought it home, and I decided to do something about it. And it was, I don't want to say it was relatively easy, because I know that a lot of people then say it's not cool anymore to suggest that being fat is just someone's fault, and obviously there are medical circumstances and different things that make it different for other people to lose weight. But for me personally, once I made that decision, it was relatively straightforward to do something about it.
I think that the reason that people, because I had the same thing, like once I was, there was a there was a time that I speak about in articles and stuff of people, like they invite me around to a house for a party, and it was all a big joke. I don't know whether you've seen me talk about that story before. You have. Yes, it's working. People are reading it. And then after that, it was like, right. And then it's not. I've not struggled with the consistency aspect since then. I think the reason people struggle is because they're not quite there yet. It's like, oh, I'd quite like to lose a bit of weight, but it's not really
the
like
pain has to exceed a certain threshold.
Exactly. Like you know, the candle factory situation was just like, God damn it, like that's it. Yeah.
I think that's true of quite a lot of things to initiate a change in your life, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I found when I first got into fitness, I would then, once I got into the gym and you get various people approaching you, asking you for advice, I used to be almost evangelical about it and spend a lot of time talking to people about diet and what little I knew at the time but thought I was an expert, and start telling them all about it. And then I quickly realised that not even sort of 5% of those people that say that they want to do it actually ever put any meaningful amount of effort into it, because they haven't got a big enough, like what we would call in sales, a big enough why. They haven't got a big enough reason. Something has got to change significantly. You like say, like some sort of rock bottom moment or some sort of realisation, because otherwise they're going to keep doing. There was a girl that used to message me quite regularly on MSN Messenger, which will give you an idea of
old school.
It was. Yeah, back in the day, but that was the only way to be a sexual predator on the internet.
Now there's hundreds of ways.
What a brilliant time.
But she was quite overweight, and she several times she sort of messaged me and, oh, Paul, I want to lose weight, what should I do? And I spent quite a lot of time sort of, you know, explaining to her different ways, and this would happen periodically every few months. One time she said, oh, what should I do? I said, you know, you could join a gym. Oh, I can't afford to join a gym. I said, oh, you go out running then. And oh, I couldn't possibly do that. So there were all reasons why she couldn't do these things. And that's what you do at the moment. She said, oh, I'm online shopping for an iPod, I think. My parents have given me like 150 quid for my birthday. I said, well, that's 6 months gym membership. Oh, no, but I want to spend it on something that I'll enjoy. And I said, so you think you're going to get more enjoyment out of an iPod than you would out of a shape? And she said, oh, you know, she made her excuses. And then a few months later, she messaged me again. Oh, Paul, I've really decided I want to lose weight and get in shape. And by this point, I just messaged her back and I said, no, you don't. And she was like, I do. And I said, you don't. And she messaged back. She said, why are you being so nasty? I do. And I said, well, clearly you don't. And she said, no, I really, really do. And I said, well, okay, well, granted, obviously you do a little bit, but it's more important to you to eat pizza and go out drinking. And she said, no, it's not at all. I said, but it must be, mustn't it? Because you consistently are making that choice to do that rather than the other thing. It's like, have you seen that Zig Ziglar? You know, I don't know if you're aware of Zig Ziglar. He's like in sales circles, he's quite a well-known sort of guru, motivational speaker, and he starts this one talk about setting goals where he says a few years ago now, he said I weighed over 230 pounds or something like that, and he said, and I weighed over 230 pounds through choice, I might add, and he said, and the reason I say I weighed that much out of choice is because I never accidentally ate anything.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, everyone's got that choice, but.
There was, just related to the MSN thing, I'm not going to just completely ignore what you said, but I saw a tweet, I think, the other day saying that there was a time where one day where you logged out of MSN forever. You're like,
yeah,
God. And you're like, I sat and thought about that for nearly
I
a
once
week.
tried logging back in about 3 years ago just to see, and it was a wasteland. Like nobody,
Bodies everywhere.
I think one dude was online.
Did he still have like heart and then the name of the girl he was in a
He
relationship
must have
with?
just like forgot that the app was open or something.
God, still online.
It was the only thing, wasn't it?
Sorry?
It was the only thing. I can remember when Facebook first brought out their messenger, and I was like, obviously trying to compete with them.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, what do these guys know? Yeah. No, I remember saying to people like, "Oh, speak to you on MSN at like certain time," and you're thinking like it's kind of pointless to have to arrange a time to speak to someone on the internet. Like, but anyway, go on.
So something you said you had this person asking you stuff. She saw you as a kind of figure of authority on losing weight, but because her desire wasn't enough, it was more just that she was getting kind of assuaging that desire, or just satisfying it by saying that she's taken the step to ask you. And we call those people askholes. And Mark Keyes, who's someone we interviewed on the podcast a while ago, mentioned this as well when he used to work in a gym. And he said at the start, just like you, he was really evangelical and really up for helping people. And I'm sure some people listening who have been lifting for some time have had this experience where you're in a gym, you see someone deadlifting like this. So like, and you'll go over and like you'll be like, I'm not being funny, but for the sake of your back, like, please just whatever. And he said, he would give people advice, and they'd always be like, "Oh yeah, cool mate, thanks." And then you see them the next day just doing exactly the same thing, completely ignoring what you said. And I suppose it's because, like, to the person who slipped a disc, they're like, "Look, I'm telling you, man, you don't want to go through this again." But for the person who hasn't, they're just like, what does this guy know? I'm not in pain now. I'm probably going to be fine. I'll carry on doing what I'm doing.
Funnily enough, my deadlift form used to be horrendous, and although I could deadlift quite a decent amount of weight, my form wasn't the best. And I used to, if I posted a video of deadlift be online, I would comment on there about my form, and I would just like post back something like, "Well, post a video of you fucking deadlift."
Yeah, classic. Yeah.
That was as interesting as, and then I've actually popped my L5S1.
Oh, man.
L5S1 Club.
Yeah, it's the most popular one.
Yeah, everyone loves it.
Just to illustrate, Paul, for those people who are listening rather than watching, what is your all-time best deadlift? 1 rep max.
330 kilos.
Yeah.
You do it in my garage. I think you might have seen it. It's
With like little plates.
Yeah, with
Probably,
like techno gym plates and a.
Because we couldn't get the collars on because we had all the weight on there.
Was it from a deficit?
Probably was, because the plates wouldn't have been.
It wasn't from a deficit. No, it was normal flat.
But the plates will have been like. I seem to remember the plates weren't full sized.
No, they were full.
Oh, were they?
The first few were full size Olympic plates, and then the rest are made up of
Like bricks and plaster and stuff.
It's like literally gaffer taped on because it went up right to the end of the bar.
Right.
But the form, you can see in that the form is horrendous. But I wouldn't listen to anyone. I could just always, like, my squat and bench have never been anywhere near in comparison to my deadlift. For some reason, mechanically, I could always deadlift a decent amount.
I mean, 330 is pretty heavy. Like, I think we can all agree on that one. So, I think it does reach a point where you're going to struggle to have perfect form with anything over 700 pounds. Picking it up with perfect form, unless you're Russian, I think is nearly impossible. So, yeah.
I literally now I don't really do any kind of what I'd call ego lifting anymore. I'm usually the guy in the gym with the lightest weights. So now, back then I had that home gym because basically I'm probably the least tolerant gym goer in the world. I train at a pure gym.
That's a terrible match of like being intolerant and going to pure gym. You just
Yeah.
So it's like 13 quid a month. So obviously it's going to attract every other high class Some people, you say about correcting people. I saw a guy there the other day, and he clearly, logically, come up with this idea in his head. So rather than do dumbbell, whatchamacallit,
Side
bend
side things.
He obviously, I'm doing one side, then the other side. This is a waste of time. Dumbbell in both hands. I can do both sides at the same time. And I sort of went over and was like, why would be polite? I was like, man, I see your idea. Obviously, do both sides at the same time, but the one way is just counteracting the other. You're literally just flexing your spine. And,
For the sake of it.
Yeah.
I like it when people hold a dumbbell and then do this with it as well.
Yeah.
You've seen that one?
Or that.
Like, do you understand what you're doing and why?
Which way does gravity work?
We once saw, like, a joke we continually bring up is we once saw a guy standing on a wobble board. I've never seen anything like it before. Actually, he was standing on a wobble board, holding a dumbbell like that, going like this, with lots of intensity, really focused, staring at himself in the mirror, just back and forth like that. And that was it. That was his session.
Here's the purpose behind that.
I mean, it can only just be to sort of feel like he's doing something, I guess. If it's hard, then it must be helpful.
Better than a night in, isn't it? So, so Paul, we have in the notes that I must have written like a year ago when I first wanted to chat to you.
Are these notes a year old?
Roughly, yeah.
Because Paul and I were just trying to decipher what they meant.
Paul's just a slippery Susan, so hard to track down. So we've got Rose by any other name. Do you have any idea what that referred to?
I remember the chat, but I don't remember what that particular one was, because we spoke about the term bro, but I think that's
all right. We'll come back to it. But speaking of bro, we've got, I think your definition of a bro is someone that parrots information without critically assessing it, and that the IIFYMers are the new wave of bro, and that you can turn anything into Broscience if you bro hard enough.
Yeah, that was what the term originally meant. I thought on the bodybuilding forums and stuff, if you call someone referred to Broscience, it's where someone's just parroting what they've been told, and just
chipping bits away off the information as it gets passed on into this kind of
going with the flow kind of thing, going with the status quo and just agreeing with what everyone agrees kind of thing. And then that term now has come to sort of mean, so people are thinking old school terms. So if it fits your macros, if you want to call them that, they kind of now make fun of all of everyone that's like a bro. But it's also like if it fits your macros, which I was a bit guilty of being for a while. I was a bit like, if it fits your macros is everything sort of thing. But they're like the new bros kind of thing, because it's weird. It's this like tribal need to. You see it all over the internet, not just in fitness, don't you? Do you know what I mean? The need to be part of something, and that need to be part of something has to involve attacking people that are part of some other group.
us and them.
The religious way people cling to their favourite diet and get really, really angry at someone that suggests their diet isn't the best way to diet is fascinating.
It's insane, yeah. When you take it from like, when they say like, if you were to have to explain to an alien what is it, you'd be like, well, we're arguing about the way that we eat potato, or like I eat the white potato and this guy eats the orange one, and the orange one's a bit sweeter and he thinks it does nicer things to his insides, but like they'd be like, well,
if you look at the whole group of sort of like bodybuilders, crossfitters, powerlifters, and the different dietary approaches within all of those, essentially those people are all kind of doing the same thing. It's like when I was a kid and I understood, and I don't know enough about it to talk about it in depth, but the fact that the troubles in Northern Ireland were between two different sects of the same religion. So they're Christians and they're killing each other. Obviously there were other things involved in the Northern Ireland thing, but you see that in other religions as well, where different types of the same religion are killing each other. And
it's always the adjacent. You've got India, Pakistan, Palestine, Israel, Russia, and all of the surrounding countries, Northern Southern Ireland. Like it's not like vastly different groups. It's like they're to the outside to a racist, they're the same.
Well, exactly. To anyone looking in on this, it's like, so all these people basically sort of pick things up, put them down, and want to get bigger. But so this group here, this group is more concerned with how pretty they look. This group here clearly have. I'm not going to talk about which group I'm talking about, but let's say this group here have no dietary adherence, so they say they're just going to be interested in performance goals. And this group here are the newest ones on the scene, and they think they're the elite and that they know the best of everything, and they eat like cavemen.
And to the outside observer, they're all just bodybuilders. Oh, you like when you tell someone you're a powerlifter or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, so you do the thing with the thong and the oil and the tan," and you're like,
"Not really."
And then you lift the weights while you're doing it. You're like, no, you're just mixing a bunch of stuff there. But
I struggle with the. You mentioned like recreational bodybuilders. That's what I put on my Instagram. So I struggle because when people say, "So are you a bodybuilder?" Then it's the closest thing to the reason I go to the gym, I suppose. The closest stuff, but I don't really want to be associated with the term bodybuilder. This is no disrespect to anyone that is in bodybuilding, but to me, I don't know, people are going to hate me for saying this, but to me personally, I would feel completely absurd, no matter what shape I was in, getting up on stage and posing covered in oil. To me, that is a completely ridiculous activity to participate in. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense towards people that do it. I just mean towards, it wouldn't be something that I could pursue as a goal to want to do that.
I suppose you get two types of bodybuilders then, two types of people that lift to be bigger. One type are the purist, like don't care about their appearance in daily life at all, but they see their body as a work of art only when it's on stage. And outside of that, they've got no attachment to how fat they are off season or any of that. Then you've got the other people like yourself who lift for the sake of their daily life and don't give a shit about standing on stage or bringing up their lats and the vastus lateralis because of the way that it's judged.
Yeah, I have nothing against it at all. It's just, to me, it just wouldn't bear any relevance. So I know there will always be a million people in better shape than me and a million people in worse shape than me. And I know it's a bit of a cheesy cliche to just be competing with yourself, but that really is the only thing that's relevant to me in a way, because that doesn't mean that I don't. You can inevitably compare yourself to all sorts of other people, but I mean, how I would compare to a group of people that turned up on a certain day at a certain place doesn't really matter to me a great deal.
I think it's the point at which it starts to, as Yusuf was saying, like you take any of the niches within fitness to the nth degree, like to its absolute end point, and you start having to live a pretty different life. Like it starts to really affect what you do, where you do it, who you do it with, what you eat, etc. And I think I made the same decision with bodybuilding, not because I ever saw myself standing on stage, but the whole pure physique improvement pursuit. You get to this point where you're like, actually being lean's shit. And like just being focused on, like, I've got to go through 10 weeks of training and maybe I might see some size gains, but maybe they won't even really be noticeable visually.
I might gain 50 grams of muscle.
Yeah, like if everything's going really well. So you might as well. The reason I chose powerlifting over anything else is not because I'm really attached to my total. It's just because it's the least invasive thing in my life that still provides motivation. I think a lot of people that we coach probably start on the route, similar to all of us, I imagine. You start on this route of, oh, I need abs or I need bigger arms. Or you almost start wanting to be a bodybuilder. And then there's this point of realization of like, actually, that's not that good going down that route.
Well, for me, the best thing about getting into the whole thing is obviously I initially got into it for aesthetics, exactly like you say, to look better. But then what it's actually given my life in terms of structure and like discipline. So without it, I can't go a day without going to the gym first thing in the morning. Without it, I'm a little bit lost, and then my diet goes wrong. It's sort of what I fit everything round, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I don't mind that, but I'm only now getting better at not sacrificing too much, like you were saying. Like it wasn't that long ago where I can remember turning down a date with a girl because I was really concentrating on getting lean that month. You know, and I thought, no, because if I go out, I'm going to end up eating food I don't want to eat, and then I'm going to have drinks and everything like that. So no, I'm just going to have to not go. And then I thought afterwards, like, have a word with yourself, like, what are you doing this for? So you can sit at home on your own in your flat and stroke your abs? Like, what's the fucking point in that? The end game is weird.
That's probably the most direct contrast as well, because most people honestly get into it to be more attractive, realistically. Like, whether or not it's how they perceive themselves as being attractive or to the opposite sex. And when you're turning down the thing that you arguably have built up to, and you're like, oh, hold on. Like, I need to be leaner so that I can go on a date.
Exactly, yeah. That's when I really realised it had all gone a little bit wrong.
Because if I have sex tonight, then my net protein balance might drop, and I'll be in a calorie deficit, and actually...
But maybe if I have leucine throughout having sex, then maybe that... I don't know, what am I doing?
Done with inside 15 minutes.
Oh, you have to. So what's your approach now then? Having, you said you started off ego lifting and being a kind of a bro, you moved in through the kind of IFYM phase. What's your approach to diet and training right now?
At the moment, I don't really weigh anything. So I always used to be of the opinion that I would never weigh my food or anything like that. But what got me into actually weighing my food and the if it fits your macros thing was when I tore my bicep tendon, and I then knew I wasn't going to be able... I always relied on the fact of just trying to eat plenty of protein and eat fairly sensibly and train really, really hard, sort of thing. That was as structured as my approach was. And then when I tore my bicep tendon, I kind of thought, well, if I'm not going to be training now, if I don't actually monitor what I eat, there's a good chance I was really terrified I was going to be fat by the time my arm healed. So I then started weighing everything and got into the if it fits your macros thing. And then once I then got used to the amount of food and what that looks like, I now don't really weigh anything other than like I weigh the amount of oats I have in the morning, just because otherwise it's
a mess.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm not like weighing how many potatoes I eat if I eat potatoes and things like that. I just kind of size it all out, and I guess I go through phases of being a bit more... I've never really bulked. I just go through stages of being a bit more relaxed with my diet, and then I kind of need to have some sort of impending event, like a holiday or something coming up, and then I'll be stricter for a while and just start cutting out desserts and eating very, very healthy during the week, maybe a bit more relaxed at the weekend, and training just kind of looks like I just vary it a great deal. I was writing down the weights and everything I was lifting and going for progressive overload all the time. Now I'm quite relaxed about it. If I go in and train chest, one day I'll train barbell, incline or flat. One day it will be dumbbells. Literally just what I kind of feel like at the time. It's quite unstructured now, really.
Something I really like about your diet approach, very no bullshit, very... Let's not beat around the bush. If you are fat, it's because you are making the conscious choice to eat too many treats. And if you cut those out, you'll get a bit leaner. And then if you relax things, you can grow a bit, and so on. And it's just like, that's really all there is to it. But we just need the level of precision required is commensurate with your progress. So if you're not making progress, you need to up the precision a little bit, and then if that plateaus, then up it slightly more. But you don't need to go balls in with tracking your heart rate variability and your CO2 and all this stuff until it's needed. I
think it's because whenever we interview anyone who's been training a long time about what they're doing, 9 times out of 10 it comes out at not nowhere near as precise and as accurate and as meticulous as you'd expect. And I think people misattribute the progress to that approach, and it's actually the result of, as you say, like you're only just now coming out of a phase where you were turning down dates to track your macro, like to be more precise with your diet. And when chatting to, on the bodybuilding side, Eric Helms is very much like, oh, I just kind of go for a weekly calorie goal. He's like, what do you mean, Eric? And then like Greg Knuckles is like, yeah, I train sometimes, like I'll go to the gym a few times a week. Like, okay, so... Because
they've had years of
ingraining the habits that are required to make that sort of approach work. And it seems like you're in the same camp. Like I'm under no illusion that your calories are not stupid, that there is some progression in your training, but to you it feels really simple compared to what you used to do.
Yeah, I guess so. So when I first started, I tried all different types of. That's why I think for new people starting out, it's very, very difficult because historically, if you listen to anything that old bodybuilders say, I was listening to an interview on Tim Ferriss's podcast talking to Schwarzenegger, and I've heard Schwarzenegger talk before about when it first started, how they would all sort of share information because they were sort of finding out how to do it. It was really hard to get your hands on that information. Now, people suffer from the exact opposite. There's so much information out there. I deliberately now don't really actively follow anything on fitness other than like you guys and a few other friends whose posts I'll look at. I don't really follow much else, genuinely, because unless if I've got a specific problem to solve, I'll go and try and find a solution to it. But otherwise, if you're just immersing yourself in fitness stuff from all different sources from social media, you just end up spinning your wheels because you try one approach, then another approach. And I think pretty much any established training approach will work if you do it consistently, and pretty much any established dietary approach other than like some stupid cabbage soup every day diet or something like that. But like if you were to do paleo or intermittent fasting, or if it fits your macros, any of those, if you applied them sensibly, and if you were to do German volume training or HIT training, like Mike Mensa style, any of those, if you did them properly and consistently over a period of time, would work, wouldn't they? It's not really, they're kind of just different choices to the same end.
It's interesting, yeah, absolutely. Like the outer shell is that's the shiny wrapper, but really at the end of the day, if it follows the basic principles of calorie balance, progressive overload, you're probably going to be okay. And it's interesting as well, you said that there's this challenge of overload of information, and it's good to know as well that we are the only fitness media that you consume, and I would agree with that. Like we
are the best, aren't we?
Well, as egotistical as that sounds, like of course we're going to think we're the best because
we are.
Because like if we thought it wasn't, then we would have filled up that gap with some content to match that. So, but yeah, I would recommend anyone to pick
follow us
to follow us, or to this is where Johnny comes in with the plugs. To pick a source that you trust and that is impartial and that distills the information down into what you need to do, doesn't overcomplicate it, and is people that you resonate with and enjoy listening to. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, bloody hell, these guys are melts.
Fantastic.
Then you got to make your choice and listen to someone who is more fantastic. But so another challenge in fitness or in someone who's starting out is the Dunning-Kruger Effect, which is the ability to assess somebody's competence. It's the idea that if anyone hasn't heard of the concept, it's when you see someone playing golf and you've never played golf before, you look and you're like, it can't be that hard. It's just swinging a stick around. I could do that. And then you go and try it and you're like, wow, I didn't even realize how little I know because I couldn't appreciate the subtlety in it until I started doing it and learned a little bit about it. Same with like driving, for example. It's only when you start driving that you realize like how shit you actually are. And so that problem means that we can't assess competence at the higher levels when we are a beginner because we don't know what we don't know. And you were talking about this before. And what would you suggest really to get over this conundrum?
It is difficult. That's why I was saying to you guys before, like you've shied away from it before, but to be more boastful and post more pictures of your progress and the success you've had with clients, because otherwise, I know Ben Carpenter won't mind me saying this, but I chat to Ben Carpenter quite a lot sometimes, and he often talks about the fact that.
You're doing really well, Paul. Like I'm impressed that you've completely ignored that.
You're better off following someone with more knowledge than just someone that's in great shape.
What are you going for it?
I was having a chat to him about it and sort of saying that's true, they don't know enough to know whose knowledge is right. So if they see someone there that's in fantastic shape that tells them that they must have so many grams of branched chain amino acids and HMB and all these other things that most people are fairly confident do nothing whatsoever, then they're going to follow that because that's what, and that person's telling them that. They probably believe that and they probably do that, but they're not even aware themselves that that's not why they're in that shape. That just happens to be something they do.
I think the other problem is that the people who do that, especially when they're in what they call Mount Stupid, where a little bit of knowledge is the most dangerous thing, is that they're so confident with their opinions and so sweeping. And whereas actually if you look at someone who really knows their stuff, you look at speak to someone like Brad Schoenfeld, like one of the the leading authorities in the research on hypertrophy, for example. You ask him a question, he's very rarely going to give you a flat yes or no answer. He's going to be like, well, it depends on these 300 variables, and actually there's a lot of restraint in what he's saying. And if you ask any senior doctor in their topic, they're not going to just be like, oh, never do that, or yeah, definitely. It's whereas you look at some InstaFit dingus that knows a little bit and is overly
definitively how many sets, how many reps, that's what you need to do, and that's how you get massive.
I think that's really the moment where you take off, start your fit, using a flight analogy. You start off and everything's really confusing, and you listen to the people making the categorical claims about do this, don't do that, and when you come out the clouds on the other side, you're like, fucking hell. You look at all the stuff that people advise, and you're almost like, how dare you convince me of these things, and
you wasted months or
thousands
years
of pounds on believing these things, and then
fortunes.
Sorry,
I wasted fortunes on supplements when I first started. One particular supplement, so they've all sort of dropped off the map now, but then the Maxim Muscle were huge.
I remember
Cyclone.
Expensive.
The read up on that and how the dextrose would spike your insulin and make you absorb the creatine, and then the HMB would prevent muscle loss, and these all worked in synergy. And I was if I ran out and my new order of cycling hadn't come, I'd struggle to motivate myself to go to the gym because it seemed absolutely futile.
I remember thinking exactly. I was like, well, what's the point in training?
I bought Cyclone. It was like 40 quid, 50 quid. I remember for a tub that was underfilled. Unnecessarily underfilled. And I remember the group of people that we trained with at the time. Two of us had Cyclone, one of us had Propane. Remember Propane? That was the weight gainer one. And we're like, oh, I don't know about that one, mate. Like this, that one's meant to really make you gain. He was really serious about it. I know you think you're making a smart decision, but Cyclone's got creatine in, so. But you look back and you're like, I really believed that at the time. And the people that are pushing that information don't seem... Either they are aware of what they're doing and it's just marketing and they don't care, or they also genuinely believe it. And there are people in the industry
drinking the Kool-Aid.
I would love to just sit down with them and go, come on. Bullshit aside, do you honestly think what you're saying is genuine? I'm not going to name everybody, but... To use a Tim Ferriss podcast example, listening to some of the stuff that Charles Poliquin's said over the years, very sensationalist.
Yeah.
And you think, Charles, honestly, do you really, really believe all of the stuff that you're saying?
There was that thing when he said, I went to France and I was on the farm and I ate, what was it? I only had grass-fed steak and cheese and milled bread. And
I didn't realise he was Australian.
That was Indian.
Oh, sorry.
and he said he gained 4 kilos of muscle and lost a couple of kilos of fat over a 1 week holiday because of the food quality. Oh yeah, definitely the food quality there must have been because of the grass fed.
But you hear it and you look at the sandwich in your hand and you're like, God, I'm never going to get big eating this stuff.
It's very hard when you first start, and you can't get through to people once they've been marketed that well. That's a lad I work with, and he might end up saying this, so hi Alex, but he's got a duffel bag full of supplements under his desk at work, and I'm constantly trying to tell him, you really, none of that stuff in there, your branched chain amino acids and stuff like that, if you sort of go on don't take my word for it. Go on examine.com and stuff like that, and try and find a human study that demonstrates that absolutely does anything helpful. And you won't find one, but it doesn't make any difference. But a lad in the gym came up to me not long ago, and he said, "Oh, I've just bought this new, I forget what weight gainer it was," and he said to this weight gainer, "It's got so many, calories worth of carbs in each serving and so many grams of protein." He said, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, I genuinely." And he said, "Yeah, so I wouldn't buy it." And he said, "Well, why? Have you heard it's bad?" I was like, "I've not heard of it, to be honest, but it sounds like a very expensive type of whey protein with some sort of sugar in it. And why would you not just buy cheap whey protein and pour it over a bowl of cereal? And that's going to be a lot more enjoyable for the amount of carbs and protein you get."
Yeah, but the thing is, Paul, like, scientific evidence is just scientific evidence, and you're just a guy who exhibits all of the characteristics that guy wants to achieve. But so obviously, what do you know? I don't blame him.
I mean, what's science ever taught us? Not next to nothing. Next to nothing.
That interview with Dawkins where someone says to him, "But isn't science just another religion, really? I mean, haven't you just got faith in science? How do you know that? Basically, you've just got faith in science. How do you know it works?" And what I like about Dawkins is how he's always so polite, but he gets this flash of real irritation.
Irritation is the word.
Just, I really got to answer this question. He's like, "Well, because planes fly." Works, and he just reels off all these things, and at the end he says, "Science works, bitches."
Bitches, yes, very.
The ironic thing is that this emergence of like the evidence-based community, just going back to the bro thing, is now just, instead of listening to T-Nation, it's people just reciting what Eric Helms said. And it's like, I'm not saying Eric Helms is not basing what he's saying on the evidence, but it's not evidence-based to just believe somebody else. Like that's the same problem, just moving along a spectrum. And it's...
Like that, I believe one of your notes is that we were talking before about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and a lot of people, they think that because a lot of these...
That was the flash of irritation.
That was going to be the cover of the podcast.
That's not going to be a so because people now just think a lot of the old school, what they call bro knowledge, some of the old school beliefs aren't true. People then assume that all of it then isn't true, and then people don't really appreciate the difference between something which has yet to be proven and something which has actually been disproven. So just because there isn't a massive scientific evidence to show that something is definitely true, that's not the same to say it's disproven. So if people have successfully done that for years and it demonstrably works, the fact that the science isn't there to back it up yet doesn't mean to say that isn't evidence-based, because there is anecdotal evidence isn't irrelevant, is it? If bodybuilders have been doing something for a number of years and they've all done well from it.
Well, the thing is, like, that is still the evidence base that is available. So it just means that there's not a large pool of evidence available, but it's still evidence-based. So if that's all we have to go on.
Perhaps on that subject, yeah, absolutely.
We still need to experiment. Like, we still have to come up with a hypothesis to test in the site. Like, if somebody's saying, "I'm trying this, it's creating these kinds of results," like, okay, let's test it on large populations. If we always just do what was done 100 years ago, then there'd never be any progression in anything. But the idea that, everything that Arnie and Franco Colombo did was wrong, and that, past the beginning of somebody discovering MyFitnessPal, nobody was ever lean, nobody ever got in shape. Like, they must have been doing everything incorrectly. Like, what they did was still working for them. It doesn't mean that just because there's slightly more evolved approaches that everything else is incorrect.
People struggle with people like black and white things, don't they? It's got to be one thing or the other. So that's you look at clean eating versus if it fits your macros, then probably your best approach is somewhere like bang in the middle of that, isn't it? Where you don't do the clean eating. Obviously, clean eating, it means nothing and everyone gets excited. Clean eating, that's not a real thing. But so let's say eating whole food, foods and concentrating on vegetables and single ingredient foods then, if you were to do mainly that, but not obsessively, and allow yourself treats and make sure you hit your overall, macronutrient goals, factoring in as much of the healthy food as possible, that's clearly the best approach. But people have to, and I was guilty of this, and I know you guys did your experiment with the taking the piss macros diet.
Yeah,
that was fun.
That upset a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, hadn't seen a complex carbohydrate in 6 months. It was all Haribo, cheesecake. But people do tend, and I went all that way, to try to prove that you can just eat chocolate and still get in good shape. And people have to go like all one way or all the other way, don't they? It's on both projects, I think.
I think that was us and yourself, I imagine, like beating out years of like it being cemented that those foods are inherently bad. Like there is something magical about the ingredients in Haribo that means that you gain fat, and I can't explain what it is. I just know that there is something about Haribo that means I will not progress. And so for someone to say, actually, it doesn't matter that much, you're like, I don't believe you. I'm going to have to experience this myself. Which
I literally shy away from all these discussions about food at work, because when you work in a place that's got like a mix of people, and you'll have some of the people that have got a bit of an interest in it, some have none, and you get these conversations come up, and I can remember once in the canteen, and people ask you, so is this healthy then? Is this a good thing for me to eat? And someone sat there with a tub of basically mixed nuts and raisins.
It's always nuts.
This is healthy, isn't it? Yes, so that's all right. Yeah, just try not to get drawn in. Why? What's wrong with that? I was like, well, it's healthy from the point of view. It's nutritious, good fats and vitamins and things like that. But it's very calorie dense, so it's bad.
It feels exactly like you're talking to a journalist and they're trying to goad you for an opinion. They're like,
looking for a headline.
But so are you feeling very tired at the minute? And you're like, no, I'm not going to get drawn into this.
So you did say that then? You did say that? Yeah. I once had a similar thing. Like I used to work in an office, and these sort of conversations, like straw man arguments, come up all the time. Someone having a Slim Fast bar after their lunch. And like at the time I was like macros and everything, like I just saw numbers in shops, and I knew that a double decker, roughly 250 calories. They were arguing about the Slim Fast bar in the corner of the room. I was like, I'm just not going to engage in it. Like I'll just sit here,
just twitching,
type away. And somebody said, oh, it's great because it's Slim Fast, like it's got ingredients in that help you lose weight. It's like, how many calories has it got in? 275. You'd be better off eating a double decker. Headphones back on. Just grenade into the conversation. But it's sometimes you almost it's as you say, like it's better to not say anything, because as soon as I said that, it's then, well, what do you mean it's better to have a double decker? And it just becomes an uphill struggle, because it's hard to help those people because they're so siloed in the way that they think and in the opinions that they have, because everyone has an opinion on diet and health and nutrition, unfortunately.
It's interesting because they've then seen some stuff on, like you get these health documentaries that are on TV. So a very intelligent friend of mine was talking about, it's in this documentary, and it was all about how bad meat was for you and everything like that in this documentary. And I was like, well, but it wasn't a scientific study, it was a documentary. So it's essentially, although it's a documentary, it's meant to entertain. It needs to get ratings. It needs to. It's not an objective point of view. And he was saying, oh no, well it is. And I was like, well, we need to, and people reference like these population studies where they say, well, and I'll make one up for, but say in Japan, people live 1.5 times as long as people do in this part of the world, and they eat mainly fish. Okay, so if we all eat fish, then clearly we'll all live forever.
Because they also all live in Japan, so like
quite a lot of other factors.
They all have Japanese names. Maybe if we change their name.
It's like you used to get there's an Alpen advert on TV that very cleverly worded, because you've got to be careful with the same advert, said people that eat a whole grain breakfast tend to have a healthier heart. Well, yeah, they do, because people that eat muesli probably have a better lifestyle and go to the gym. People that eat Cocoa Pops, generally speaking, Cocoa Pops.
See, what we're trying to do is afford Haribo, cheesecake, and Pringles the right to be able to say people who eat Pringles are
tend to have
5 to 10% body fat on average.
I wonder how many people you sabotaged and got fat off that.
This isn't working. Yeah.
You know, people that read half of the article and they're like, yeah, I'll give that a go.
The most common criticism is people who read the title and then say, that's not possible. It's like, what do you mean it's not like what?
I haven't read the article, but I think this is bullshit. And I think, like, okay, well, why don't you read the article and then
explain why?
Like, oh, well, I've read the article now and actually it's quite reasonable.
I think we discussed. I think the documentary is What the Health. Is that what you're referring to?
That's one of the recent ones, isn't it? Yeah.
Yusuf hasn't watched it because I keep telling him not to. Because I watched it, I'm like, oh, Yusuf would be really cross about this. Every single person I think they interview, or not everybody, but the majority of the doctors are like financially motivated by the argument. Like they have a book or a product or a clinic promoting the concept. And they never seem... Have you seen the documentary?
I haven't actually watched it, no. I saw a few people sort of critiquing it online and I just thought I got nothing to gain from it. It was Chris actually that we were speaking about before, who's another podcast guest. He was like, guys, you need to watch this. I'm like,
oh no, a case.
Well,
especially you.
I trust Chris. Like I think he's, I'm sure he's watched it. I'm sure it's a good documentary. Sit through it and you're just like, oh my God. They never once introduce someone who disagrees. Like who really just thinks that meat's fine and that actually veganism isn't the best thing to do.
One of the main points they're pushing in that, is it? That's the one where
it's basically it's an argument for a plant-based diet. Essentially, that's what they're promoting, but they just don't allow the other side to give a discussion.
I can't remember what show it was when they were like, and now for the sake of balanced discourse, we go over to the head of the KKK for his opinion, and it's just like.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more agenda promoting than when it's not a discussion, it's just someone's opinion supported by loads of experts.
It's the first thing I always want to do if I've got a strong opinion on something. So, like, and I literally learned this, I think, when I was 13, because I was probably, I think you may know, my father's a priest, he's a vicar. But until the age of, like, 13, I sort of went to church and everything like that. And then when I got to about 12 or 13, I one day just then learned the skill of actually, I thought to myself, well, obviously I believe this, my parents have told me all this stuff's true. What would it be like? There's obviously I was aware lots of people didn't believe it. And so I thought, what would it be like if I didn't believe this and someone was telling me all this now? And I stepped outside it and I looked at it and I was like, oh my God. Weird cult. And my father's the leader in a robe at the front. And he's chanting things, and we're all chanting things back to appease this guy. Then you break the story down, and you realise, I don't want to offend any religious people. It's probably a little bit late tonight. Because my dad, like literally, he said, "Oh, go to church today," and I said, "I don't actually want to go." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I don't think it makes sense." And he said, "Which part of it?" And I said, "Well, none of it really." In order for the sins to people to be forgiven, God had to make his son into human form, send him down so he'd be tortured and killed so my sins I hadn't even committed yet could be forgiven. I mean, it's nice that he did that on my behalf, but he could have asked me first.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. Surely if God wanted to forgive our sins, he could have just said, it's okay. Why did it? And none of it. Anyway, I've gone off on a little bit about anti-religion, but I mean that ability to. So any opinion I hold, I will always try to think to myself, right, this is my opinion on this. To test this opinion, can I hold the other opinion? So I think Aristotle said the mark of an educated mind is to entertain an idea without accepting it. So you try to adopt the opposing point of view. Try and make the best case you can for the opposing point of view, and if you can't. Genuinely try to adopt the other point of view and you can't, then you are assured that you probably do have the correct point of view. And sometimes you find out that's not the case. But some people aren't interested in doing that, aren't they?
There's Stephen Fry's opinion on, it's very similar on religion. I don't know whether you've seen the video, talking about any god that does this, is a lunatic and wouldn't. Yeah, it's a similar, like, again, it's as you say, it's like looking objectively at the, like, what am I actually involved in doing here? Could I think about what would an alien think if landing on Earth and me explaining, like, this is why I'm putting 10 grams of caffeine into my, not 10 grams, this is why I'm putting 500 milligrams of caffeine into my post-workout shake an hour before bed, because someone whose last name is the same as a dairy-based product.
Yeah.
Carb backloading. Told me to. Apart from that, like, I don't have any argument why. When you think of it like that, like, I'm being a bit of an idiot, aren't I? Preventing myself from sleeping so that I can modulate my insulin response.
Carb backloading to consume caffeine before bed?
Not necessarily before bed, but that's right, isn't it? Post-workout?
It was to have it post-workout to try and blunt the insulin response so that more glucose is taken up by GLUT4. It was...
I remember because we interviewed John right when carb backloading was coming out, and I just remember we had such a long list of questions that I don't think he was ready for. Because Yusuf
about
was
hormone-sensitive lipase and
something really,
fatty acid synthase. And all
so you're saying that insulin does this, but if it does this, then why does this happen? And it wasn't expected.
I like John Kiefer, to be honest.
Me too. Me too. Even if it's all
he
right
made me
or
drink
wrong,
disgusting drinks years ago.
He's great at promoting an idea, which is, like, obviously is why one of the reasons he's doing so well in the fitness industry. And Carb Backloading is a good book, but I think people criticise the relevance of the references and whether or not the studies that he's referencing do actually support the information that he's promoting. But sorry, John.
If you're going to you need to be actually good at if you're going to make a living doing what you guys do, you've either got to be really good at genuinely coaching people and helping them solve their problems and being like what an actual coach is. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because anyone can work out someone's macros for them, can't they? You can do that on a website kind of thing. But being an actual coach, actually coaching someone through problems, if you can't do that, then you need to find some sort of wacky new angle that no one's thought of before. And because there really aren't any, you've kind of got to make something up and base it on some sort of flimsy science, haven't you?
Yeah.
Like, you'd have thought that someone could make so much money off telling people to put fucking butter in coffee. That guy's cleaned up.
Yeah.
You can't tell them that putting butter in coffee is not a good idea. They'll still crack on and do it.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried it?
Yep.
Many times. Both of us.
Yeah.
We did it for months, didn't we?
Yeah, because that sounds legitimate. Like, he's certainly, when you listen to him, he certainly has a lot of science behind what he's saying.
He sounds sure about what he's saying.
So it must be right.
I did it quite a lot. Yeah, no. The first time I got quite caught out by it because I had a very, very strong coffee with coconut oil in it before I went for a long run.
Oh.
When you first do it, it has quite an effect on
the old
explosive consequences.
The old trouser trumpet. The old gluteal tuber.
Sorry?
The old gluteal tuber. Yeah.
Yusuf was doing, I don't know whether you saw when we were in Iceland, Yusuf was doing a lot of Instagram stories.
Yeah, I did see a few of those with the most inventive different ways to describe
So this is, so he was thinking, how can I describe the smell of the geyser? And then he Googled other ways of describing
burping the clown.
Somebody breaking wind. Sorry?
Those weren't just off the cuff.
No,
unfortunately.
Yeah. Sorry to ruin the illusion, everybody. But yeah. I actually think that the religion... what's the word I'm looking for?
Analogy.
Yes. Analogy. See, Paul knows me better than you do. Is good in the sense that I think that people talk about atheism as being someone who understands all religions and has decided not to subscribe to any particular one. I think the mark, in my opinion, of a true coach, of someone who's really good at coaching, going back to that original point, is someone who can say, when someone goes, what do you think about bulletproof coffee? You're like, well, I understand what Dave's saying. I've tried it myself. Here's my opinion on it.
The agnostic.
Yeah, rather than like, oh well, I read an article that was criticizing it, I think that should be the same with every approach, and something that I guess we pride ourselves on, I suppose, is that we have accidentally, but that's not relevant, accidentally tried pretty much everything, and have sort of arrived at the approach that we have now as a result of that. And so that would probably be what I would look for. Sorry?
That's where your value comes from, the fact that you have done all that stuff, so other people don't
have to. It's a good, yeah. So that would be, looking for someone to follow, or looking for people to follow. I would say, look at what they've tried themselves. Look at like what the experiences they have, rather than just, because anybody can record a video and talk about macros and training and
be like, that's great, or that's bullshit if you haven't tried it. But if you've invested yourself in the process and actually drawn a conclusion from it, then there's no agenda, because you've actually been in there and you believed it at one point.
Tried it. Yeah.
I actually think that everybody who has a problem with Bulletproof Coffee should try, give honestly a try Bulletproof Coffee for a month and see if you notice anything. Because imagine if you did notice something. Think how earth-shattering that would be for you.
You'd have to swallow your pride, wouldn't you? And just be like, you know what, actually...
Yeah, actually...
It was really good.
I remember the first person I've ever heard use that argument was Rob Wolf for paleo. He was like, just do 30 days of paleo. What have you got to lose? And when someone presents that kind of argument to you, you're like, well...
Well, actually, quite a lot, because if you don't... You should know better than me on this, but my understanding is you can actually give yourself a gluten intolerance if you cut gluten out of your diet for long enough. Because I remember, I mentioned another fitness name, Ben Coomer used to always say with his clients, is get them to cut out. He now doesn't know this point of view, I don't think, but I remember he used to say he used to get his clients to cut out gluten entirely for 30 days, and then at the end of that 30
have a big binge at the end.
Have a big burger.
Then you always have a stomach ache, and that then was really, really bad. Well, it proves that you're no longer producing the enzymes that digest gluten, and you've given yourself gluten intolerance.
Yeah. So I think, I agree with you, and that actually happened to you, right?
Oh God, yeah.
In a big way.
It's painful. Yeah, and you're totally right. I haven't heard it put like that, and it makes a lot of sense. Like if you systematically sensitize yourself to something, and then load yourself with it afterwards, and see how you feel.
See if you're sensitive to it then. Right?
Probably big shit.
Yeah.
But actually,
literally speaking.
Every day then have the sandwich at the end of 30 days, you haven't got the stomach ache. So what have we really demonstrated? Just thought with that as well. I literally thought, well, honestly, if this whole thing is true that we haven't yet evolved to digest gluten, well, eventually we will. And sandwiches are that fucking good. I'm prepared to stick it out for future generations.
For the sake of sandwiches. I agree. Yeah, I'm willing to take one for the team.
So future generations can enjoy a sandwich.
I've never seen someone eat sandwiches as quickly as Johnny.
It's a blessing.
Oh, really?
He eats sandwiches in feet quicker than he can walk. Like he eats them at a rate of knots. Like it's incredible.
When we were in Iceland, we should probably do a podcast just about Iceland. It was freezing cold. Like I'm sure people will be like, yeah, well.
The best places to go to catch winter sun.
Yeah, well, we thought, the weather's pretty crap here in the UK this time of year. Why don't we
take an upgrade?
Go on pro mode, go on expert level, and go really, really cold. And we decided in the evening, because you check the temperature, and you're like 2 degrees. It's 2 degrees all the time in the UK. Like I can handle that. Just wear a shirt, step outside, and within sort of 3 or 4 minutes, looking for a restaurant, we're like, I can't handle this. We need to go inside somewhere. Subway was where we were. Went into Subway to sample the Icelandic cuisine, and I think I ate a foot-long Subway before Yusuf had eaten 6 inches.
I think before I'd even made a dent in 6 inches.
But I think we're at the opposite ends of the spectrum, aren't we? So we should do a sandwich eating live stream one time.
Have you ever taken on any? Have you ever done any eating challenges or anything like that?
Only once, really informally, someone challenged. There's something about number of Jaffa cakes eaten in a minute or something. And I've tried that. Surprisingly hard because they're dry.
Yeah.
I only drink with that.
Yeah, there's something like a slice of bread in a minute as well. Things like that, but never like, can I eat an entire pizza in
if you ever come to Bournemouth, there's a steakhouse here called Funky Griller, and they do a 50-ounce steak challenge with chips. And if you eat the whole thing, you get it free.
1.42 kilos.
Yeah, Yusuf's just converted it.
It's like 3.5 pounds or something of beef. I've done it. Right?
Of course you have.
My name's on the wall in there, but it's.
Is there a time limit?
Yeah, 40 minutes.
40 minutes. Okay, I was going to say you could just like set up for breakfast and just nibble on it all day.
Exactly. My strategy was, they reckon it takes is it whatever neurochemical it is that tells you you're full. It takes 20 minutes for that to get from your stomach to your brain. So I thought, well, that's easy then. I'll just nail it inside 20 minutes and be like, peekaboo, I'm full. So I tried to put, literally, it took me 20 minutes just to eat the steak, and then you've got this whole plate of chips and proper dipped in batter, deep fried onion rings, and every single chip was like battle.
So it's not just the steak; it's the full meal.
It's the steak, the fries, the onion rings, and the salad. Yeah.
I imagine you could eat a sandwich quite fast, Paul.
I'd like to take you on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do a Skype sandwich contest.
I think next time we're down south, we should actually do a proper one.
Did you say you're coming down to Wiltshire or something sometime?
Yes, from the 21st until the 2nd of December, January, I'm going to be doing a 10-day silent retreat. So
no sandwiches.
No sandwiches. So for people that have been listening to the podcast, I interviewed my flatmate and someone did a guest post about doing the same 10-day retreat. So I'm actually going to do it over Christmas and New Year. So while everyone's celebrating
Mr.
Turkey,
Festive.
I'll just be sat on a little cushion in a lonely room.
And I might get this word wrong, but is that like Vipassana? Is that how you say it? Yeah. So no communication or anything? Just
No eye contact, one meal a day, no talking, no like simple pleasures, and phone in a safe.
I don't know about you, Paul, but that sounds fantastic fun. Like when I think, how do I want to spend my Christmas? Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it after you, mate. I'll do it. Yeah.
Do you guys ever listen to Sam Harris or
Ham Saris?
Ham Saris.
Are you fans of his? Or
Yeah, like his stuff.
I listened to his book.
Waking Up.
Waking Up. Yeah, because I'm absolutely rubbish at reading books now. I used to read a lot of books, but I think the whole social media and smartphone thing, I think I've now got like a form of low-level ADHD where I struggle to actually just sit and read a book. But with an audiobook, I can go and sit somewhere and...
I agree. Well, the thing that's so upsetting is, like, if you count up the number of total words that the average person reads scrolling through news feeds and stuff, it probably amounts to thousands and thousands of words a day.
Oh, God.
Like...
Shit.
Of shit, yeah. You're just polluting your brain, and it's so annoying when you think of that and you're like, oh, damn it. Like, anyway, Paul, I think we are running over time. I'll let you get on with your day. But thanks so much for coming on. This has been
it was awesome.
A lot of fun. For people who want to find out more about Paul, follow him on Instagram to start with. Anywhere else, Paul, that you'd recommend?
It's really just so I shut the website down a little while ago where I had all the protein recipes and stuff.
Oh,
That's a shame, but there is one coming up on Propane Fitness that is the ultimate guide to protes. So that's a guest post from Paul. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Recently, do you know the old videos where I used to, I don't even want to do, but where I used to go,
they were the best.
So that all started, and it randomly at the end of a couple of videos, just I tasted some food and then went, after said, well, why didn't you do your catchphrase at the end of your Instagram?
And you're like,
oh, God.
So it became this thing I started doing. I now haven't done it for about 2 years, and I still regularly get people post on my Instagram going, when are you going to start doing the huHOO?
People love it.
It's bizarre. Yeah, really bizarre. But I might do one for old time's sake soon. So
oh, definitely do.
Years will just think I'm mental.
Excellent. Well, yeah. So we'll put the link to the Protes Super article. Like, out of all the sort of protein style foods, I love it because it's just so simple and very macro friendly. Also,
That sounds like such an affiliate push.
such a Delia Smith
Of
thing to
all
say.
the protein recipes, I love this one.
This is my favourite. And the Propane Fitness pre-workout power muffins, which
They were the best.
they were good. They are also in the description, in the show notes.
I still have protein for breakfast, like literally every single day. Just
Do you?
the amount of carbs to volume ratio, I just don't think you can beat it. So I always used to have granola for breakfast, and then it was only when I started doing If It Fits Your Macros and actually started weighing stuff, and I actually weighed what I was having as a bowl of granola.
100 grams of granola is like
I know.
this much, and it's like 700 calories.
400 grams. Because you look at the calories in it, you're like,
I remember we have a good friend who actually used to be part of Propane Fitness, but he has a real thing for granola. So Dan, if you're listening, we understand your grief. But I remember once you start tracking calories, and he would used to just like put away a box of granola, and the look of sort of the slow realization of him realizing like it's lethal. Like you put away a box that's 1,500 calories easily, and you're still hungry.
hyper palatable, but
Yeah. Well, it's like sweet, crunchy, oat-based, bit of raisins.
like a wolf in sheep's clothing, because you think that's got to be healthy. Look at the oats and raisins, the almond slices in there.
Fruit, whole like grains, everything, fantastic, and it's got honey in instead of sugar, so that's natural.
It's good sugar.
Good sugar, one of the good sugars, yeah. So fantastic. All right, Paul, we'll put all those links in the show notes, but it has been fantastic having you on.
Let's again, even if it's on a podcast, but let's chat again. And when you're down in this part of the country, perhaps not when you're on a silent retreat, but when you are actually talking, we'll go for a sandwich.
Let's
do it, man.
go for 1.4 kilos of steak.
Oh yes,
Sounds good.
Well, so you've got the choice of seeing me before normal Yusuf or post 10 days, where I'll probably be a bit like on the sort of 2nd of January.
It's more fun to sort of play mind games with you before you go in, or come out the other side broken.
Yeah, you might end up meeting a very broken man. Cool, Paul. We will speak soon.
Cheers, boys. Take care.
Cheers.